I feel like Paul Revere trying to tell everybody about this movie's slight deceptive marketing before it comes out. Is it the scariest movie of the year? No. But it is one of the best. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the movie Presence by Steven Soderbergh, the guy who did the Ocean's 11 movies. Yeah, he did a horror movie, and it's unique because the entire movie is shot through the perspective of a ghost, and we'll get to that point later. But all the trailers for it have sort of made it seem like it's just your typical scary movie, jump scares, and then this quote comes up saying one of the scariest movies of the year. I felt compelled to make this video because in my last video I was criticizing Blumhouse for sometimes their trailers feel a little misleading, making you think a movie is a slasher, but it turns out to be a family drama where this family is just haunted by a supernatural thing and no one dies, and I called them out for that. But this movie, Presence, it is a family drama where no one dies and they're haunted by a supernatural being, but it's really good. The movie is about a family who is haunted by a ghost in their house, and the entire movie is shot through the ghost's point of view, so it looks something like this. From the beginning, the ghost really isn't meant to be scary, it's a storytelling device. We, as the audience, are the ghost. We're not following the ghost like a main character, we literally are the ghost. And so when this new family moves in, the ghost moves around and gets to know about the family, just like how we, the audience, are getting to know the family because the movie just started. The ghost takes a liking to one particular member of the family, the teenage daughter named Chloe. But Chloe is grieving the loss of her best friend, and she starts to question, is the presence in the house the ghost of her best friend? I want to talk about the ghost character and compare it to a somewhat similar movie that I'm sure other people will compare this to, In a Violent Nature. If you don't know, In a Violent Nature follows a Jason Voorhees type slasher named Johnny as he hacks his way through a friend group trying to get his mother's ring back. In both movies we follow the bad guy, the supernatural force who comes into these human characters' lives and maybe messes them up a little bit, but that should get rid of the scares, right? Because the scary stuff comes from when you don't know what's in the dark and you don't know what's going to pop out at you. But when you are the ghost, how are you supposed to be afraid of the ghost? In a Violent Nature, for the most part, isn't scary, it's just really gory. Except for the climax of the movie, when we stop following Johnny and we focus on one of the human characters he's hunting, and we follow her, and then we get really scared because we don't know where Johnny is. You know what, I did a whole video about it, go check that out. With Presence, the scares come from not being able to control your own body. We, the audience, are the ghost, but we can't control its actions. Sometimes the ghost gets really up close to someone, right in their face, and we, the audience, don't know, is the ghost gonna hurt them, throw something across the room? We, the audience, are not in control, and that's actually a huge theme throughout the entire movie, not being in control of your own body. Whether it be trauma controlling you, depression controlling you, drugs controlling you, or even other people controlling you, which plays a big part into the ending, which I won't give away, but the scares come from the ghost doing something you wouldn't expect. There are times where you'd think the ghost would intervene in places, when there's a character that's like, I don't believe there's a ghost here. And then you're like, well, now's the perfect time for the ghost to do something to make this person believe. And they don't. And it's hard to pin down the ghost's motivation for doing things. And that's what keeps things suspenseful, because if we knew the ghost was entirely good and friendly, it wouldn't be scary. But if it was all out evil and bad, then we would expect it to do all the evil things, and then it's not much of a surprise now either. But it's somewhere in this gray area where sometimes it does mean things, sometimes it helps other people, and you don't know what it's trying to do. because it seems like the ghost is friendly towards Chloe, but there are times where it could definitely help Chloe and doesn't. This gives the ghost an actual personality, something I'd say Johnny from In a Violent Nature was lacking. He was, in that movie, compared to just an animal who likes to kill, and that's about it. But with the ghost in presence, it's actually a person with thoughts, feelings, and motivations. I watched this movie at an early screening with a Q&A afterwards with Steven Soderbergh, the writer David Coep, and the rest of the cast. And David mentioned a challenge he ran into while writing the film is giving the ghost motivation to go up close for close-up shots, because you can't just insert a close-up shot. There needs to be a reason why the ghost gets up close and personal and looks at that thing. So literally every camera movement is dictated by the ghost's motivations, and I think he pulled that off wonderfully through the writing. It's not just like, oh, the plot needs me to zoom in on this one piece of paper, so I'm just gonna look at the piece of paper. No, there's a reason for everything happening with the camera movement. Speaking of the camera movement, let's talk about it. Steven Soderbergh is also the cinematographer, so he's the one actually holding the camera in all these shots, and he does a great job. The entire movie is a series of one-shot takes split up by blackouts, very much like a theatrical experience while watching a play. You watch a scene, and then it's a blackout, they move to the next scene. And that's what it reminded me of. We've talked about the ghost, so now let's talk about the family. Because like I said, a majority of this movie is a family drama. It's the ghost watching and taking in information about these family members and their arguments and what they're going through at work or school. We have the two parents, Rebecca and Chris, and the two kids, Tyler and Chloe. Rebecca is borderline emotionally incestuous towards Tyler. He is her golden boy, the golden child who can do no wrong. He does professional swimming and has all these competitions, and you can see that his future is laid out for him. He's just going to be a swimmer. He doesn't need to study or be emotionally intelligent. All he has to do is rely on swimming and he'll be good. And Rebecca even has a conversation with him saying, hey, you know, you're really talented and special, and people like you can get away with things and make mistakes. So go ahead, make as many mistakes as you want, because there aren't any consequences for people like you. With all the positive attention Tyler receives from his mom, Chloe feels a little bit left out and like a loner, and that's where Chris comes in. Chris is a really positive father figure, actually, and is there for Chloe, always takes Chloe's side, and because no one else is standing up for her. He's the only one who pushes back on Rebecca towards her relationship with Tyler, and is the only one who takes Chloe's mental health seriously. And one thing I loved about this movie is the realism and the realistic dialogue. This family is written like a real family. They fight, they make up, and then they fight again. Especially the teenagers. I feel like this is some of the most realistic depiction of teenage characters I've seen in a really long time. And also I have to applaud just the use of technology. It's not cringe, like the teenagers aren't out here making TikToks and using a bunch of slang words. No, they use their phones occasionally to like text and play music, but that's about it. Each character has their own story, and as the ghost moves around from room to room, you get bits and pieces of that character's story. Some are more complete than others, like the ghost mostly follows Chloe, so we understand more of Chloe's story than we do other characters. But what I really enjoyed is the parents' storyline. It never really gets completed, but that's not really the point. The storyline is just there so we learn more about the characters themselves and for the realism. Like, there's a point in the story where Chris is considering getting a separation from Rebecca. Is this overall important to the plot? Not really. But his decision and what he decides to do does build his character up, and we can understand him more. And I know I keep calling this a family drama, and yes, there are scenes where characters are just talking about their personal lives and their personal struggles at school or work. But don't get me wrong, they are certainly aware that there is a ghost in this house, and that is a good majority of the movie is them trying to figure out what supernatural thing is happening. It's not like they're completely unaware of it. That's where the scares come from. I suppose if you're watching this video after you've seen the movie, you'll want me to talk about the ending. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of videos out here saying, Presence ending explained, the hidden meaning of the ending. Probably my biggest critique with the movie is the ending and how it's a little too obvious. There's one shot at the end that kind of reveals something, and you as the audience go, oh, okay, I like that, that's interesting. But then Rebecca has a line explaining what just happened and like the point of the movie, and you're like, oh, she kind of just spelled it out for me. I think all I would do is just cut out that one line that like explains the twist, and I think it would be good. I'm not going to make an ending explained video because I think they explained the ending within the movie, but I do think knowing the ending, it is good to look back on all the previous scenes through a new lens and being like, oh, this is why this person did that and did this. And it makes a lot more sense and makes you see the movie in a whole new light, and it would be great on a rewatch. That being said, I did really like the twist, and I think it underscores the theme very well. And you might be asking yourself, well, what's the theme? Well, it's something Lucy Liu pointed out in the Q&A that really resonated with me. She said that grief is non-linear. When a loved one is sick, you grieve them before they pass. Heck, when even no one is sick, you still grieve knowing the fact that one day your parents will pass or your grandparents will pass. And when someone is passing, you grieve currently in the moment. After they pass, you certainly grieve. Sometimes when they pass, you don't grieve, and you have to wait a really, really long time for the grief to come up. Grief is non-linear. It's not just this one straight line that you feel all the emotions and then you're done. Grief comes and goes. It flows just like a spirit throughout a house. But I do highly recommend you check out Presence this weekend. It's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. Okay, I guess that's not saying much. I just say go in with reasonable expectations. Do not expect some poop your pants jump scare fest. That's certainly not what this is. I wouldn't call it the scariest movie of the year. Heck, I was probably scared more watching Wolfman because that had jump scares in it. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a straight up drama. There is tension and suspense and some really good scary scenes that had me on the edge of my seat and I couldn't look away. I know it's early, but this might just possibly end up on my best of the year list this year. And hey, if you missed it, maybe check out the best of the year list I did for 2024.